Hey everyone, welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking about requests with the Python library. Sometimes I found that when you first learn Python or a programming language, you don't know a ton about what to do with it. In particular, Python has a really great way of interacting with the web instead of just local data. So we're going to use requests today to actually understand a little bit more how we can play with that in Python. So first thing you got to do is open up your terminal or your command prompt, whatever you use, and you're going to have to run Python m pip install request to actually install request. You'll see I already have it installed, so we don't need to do anything else with it. And now in order to get our text file going, I've created a file called request.py, and this will be available in my repo if you'd like to check out the code. And the first thing we need to actually do is go ahead and import request. So go ahead and type in import request, and we'll specify a few things. A URL equals and this URL is actually for the Star Wars API. I'll put a link down in the description for it as well. And then we'll do equals request get, and that is it. One thing we should do a little bit more is actually figure out what our output is going to be. So let's actually just print Star Wars API once the request has been made to see what we get. So when we run our script, you'll see the only thing that we get is a response 200 indicating that the response or the request went through okay to this URL. Let's actually go ahead and copy this a few times and see what we can get out of it. So one example would be we want the response status code. We have headers, text, content, and that should just about do it for the use cases that we have for now. So let me save this and we're going to rerun it. You'll see we get a little bit more information back. So in addition to our response 200, we get a specific status code. So this is actually going to be an integer according to Python. We get the headers, so the entire headers that we get back from the request response. In case we need to parse those, there may be cookies in there, there may be session IDs in there that we need to take into account for. And then again, after that, we have text and content. I know it's kind of jumbled up in there, but we're going to break it apart bit by bit in a second. One thing I do want to point out is that if you are requesting text and content, they're both going to come back as strings or string-like bytes. You can't actually do anything with it, and I'll show you what we can do about that in a moment. So next thing we want to do is actually import JSON, which is built in to Python. Comment these out, and now what we can do is when we print Star Wars API, we can call JSON on it in order to parse that response as JSON. And you'll see now we get something similar to what we had above with our body response. The only difference is this is a parsable dictionary that Python can take advantage of. Now we can do cool stuff like print Star Wars API JSON, and let's see if we can just get that films key out of it. And now we do. So in addition to our dictionary, which is the first two lines, we have our specific films URL. So let's build upon this a little bit further. And we're going to go ahead and create a variable called films. Request.get again. And instead, we're going to pass in Star Wars API JSON films. And then let's go ahead and print films.json. Make sure you spell requests plural. And now we get a bigger response body back because we're actually pulling data from the films. So we get our response from the original Star Wars API call. We make a second call to films, and now we get this massive blob of text back. Anyway, So let's build upon this a little bit further while we wrap this up and actually play with films a tiny bit more. Let's make this a bit more bulletproof. So if films status code equals 200, then we're going to actually do something with it. So film JSON equals films JSON, and then for film in films JSON, and we'll see in here we actually have a results array, so let's make sure we're in that. Let's just print film. So to quickly recap, once this second request gets made, we're going to check the status code. If it is 200, then we're going to go ahead and assign the films JSON variable to films.json, and then we're going to iterate through them. So we should just be printing out the film that we get. So one more thing we need to do there is make sure we have the title, comment this out, and let's run our script. And now we have a nice and neat printed list of the film titles that we received. So we actually did make 2 API calls. We made a first one to the Star Wars API. We parsed it, and we grabbed a films URL specifically. We made another request to that films URL, and then we iterated through it based on the response status code. So I hope this has been helpful. You can see how clever this is when you start working with APIs, what you can use Python for. The syntax is great, so I highly recommend checking it out when you first get your bearings with Python, and just start playing around with the data that's available. As always, leave comments down on the script in your comment section. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have, and the code for this will be available in my repository and a link in the description as well. Until then, take care, guys.